I'm excited about this interview. So, in marketing, just like, when you're doing a book, the front of the book and the back of the book are the reasons why people open the book. So it has a lot to do with marketing. And the hardest part is creating that, I want to see more. And what you've done so far has allowed people to understand why they want to work with you. So I want to talk more about what books have you written? Have you written a book for yourself?
You know what? I've not written one solely for myself. I've done several co-writes, and of course, the books that I've ghostwritten, I could never share due to that industry. But I've probably at this point written 12 or 13, and I think my favorite part about what I do is every project I work on, it's totally different from the last. Even if it's somebody's memoir, everybody has a totally different story. And I always learn something about myself during the process. I'm always very grateful to meet other people and hear their stories and help them tell their stories well, because, you well know this, but nobody's going to write a memoir if they've had the most perfect life ever, because, who would buy that? It's just not really believable. But people who write the most compelling memoirs are those who've overcome amazing struggles, just incredible stories, and they're inspirational, and that's what we want. We want to feel uplifted. We want to feel encouraged. But when you're the author and you're going through that, it is really scary to share that with somebody else, and that's part of what I do. It's the combination of the technical part, which is the writing and the coaching, and the verb tense, but it's also a lot of therapeutic work when you're working with memoirs, because you have to open up, you have to be transparent enough to share all of the details with your audience so that they get you. They feel compelled to continue reading and buy your next book.
Well, I've done a compilation book. Actually, we're releasing the second one here through Tough Talk Network. It's called Share Your Message with the World. And I want people just to tell a chapter of their journey in life, not what they do, but how they got to where they are, the struggles that they've overcome, the truth, right? And then I wrote a book on my own called My Life Story, called From Las Vegas to the Promised Land, one man's journey from death and destruction to his destiny. Now, I got to tell you, Alice, when it comes to writing, my wife won't let me send out an email unless she reads it. I'm not really good at that, right? And I had a ghostwriter sit down with me every week for a while, and she would turn on a recording, and we would just have conversation. And I made sure that on the cover of the book, it's by Tony Gambone as told by Shirley Carney. I wanted people to get that, know who she was and the story that she told. It's my information.
Yes.
So my question is, do you find that people don't want anyone to know who told the story? Or, have you had people say, I want to put your name on here or mention you in the book or something like that?
I've had both. I've had some people who don't have any problems having me listed as a co-author or even in the acknowledgments or on the copyright page. And then some people, usually due to their position or their career, they feel like if someone found out that they didn't truly write the book, that they would lose credibility, even though I don't think that's true. It's ghostwriting and co-writing is so common these days. But so I've had both, and I've been in the industry so long that it doesn't bother me either way. I just want to make sure that the story is told correctly. So whether my name is on it or involved at all, as long as the story is correct and they're pleased with it, and they feel confident about the entire process, that's what makes me happy.
So, question for you, because one of the things that I found in my journey with the ghostwriter is that, well, I'm in Texas, but you probably could tell by a hint of my accent that I'm not from Texas. I'm from the Northeast. Yes. And the lady who wrote the book was from the South. Mm-hmm. So I did a stint of time in the casino business in the South, opening up riverboats. So my life went from Philadelphia to Las Vegas to, Mississippi, back to Las Vegas to Texas. So when having someone ghostwrite for you, how difficult for you is it to make sure that you stay in their culture, so to speak, in their speaking? For what I mean? So the story sounds like it's come from that person.
I don't think that it's difficult at all, but I've been doing this for a while. The thing that I pride myself on as a ghostwriter is that when I sign a new client, before I ever start writing for them, I will research them extensively. And so if they have written any blogs, if they have any YouTube videos, I study them, and I need to even Skype with them to see their face when they speak, so I can learn their mannerisms. And so, maybe a few weeks or even a month down the line, when it's time for me to start putting the words on paper, I'm thinking like they would, and I'm saying things like they would. And of course, I do the same thing. I interview people, I record it, I have a transcriber do that, and so then I get the transcript and I go from there. So it's all their words, or the majority are their words. But anytime that I have to reword or interject or, go from one chapter to the next, I want to make sure that anything I put down sounds exactly like they wrote it. So I have to learn that person, to be honest.
Editing the book, do you do that part as well?
I do. I do the initial review, and I do the content edit, which is the big, some people call it substantive editing, some people call it content editing, but that's the first major overhaul for the editorial side, to just make sure that, all the T's are crossed and I's are dotted, and if a paragraph needs to be moved, then it's moved. If a chapter needs to be deleted, it's deleted. Big picture stuff, does it make sense? Is the reader going to have any questions? Is something not explained well enough? Are there redundancies? So that kind of thing. And then I hire out a copy editor and 2 proofreaders after I've done that to make sure that when I'm done with it, we hand it over. If they're going to self-publish, they can go ahead and self-publish. If they've got a publishing deal, they could hand it over to the publishing company, and it's ready to go. So I provide an entirely finished manuscript.
Because in my experience, once again, a lot of people want to self-publish. It seems easier today. But there's things that go along with that. And one of the things that I learned was it's really important who edits the book. And it probably should be the person that, if you have a ghostwriter, that's writing the book. And then, of course, other people should see it with different eyes as well. I had someone edit the book that was in the northwest part of the country. So terminology that was used in the book from the northeast to the south was not, they were looking at more of having correct language versus, if you say good old boy in the south, it's spelled a little bit different than good old boy in the north.
Yes.
So, I learned a lot. I really did. And, I've been interviewing authors and speakers for 7 years now, so I'm always quizzing them on that. So I would like for you, and of course, Alice, we think that everyone should hire you to do all their work. Okay, but if there's a chance that they're out shopping the market, what are some of the nuggets that you would tell them to make sure of that happens a lot and people get caught in the end with extra costs?
Okay, so for extra costs, one of the first things I tell any author, when you're shopping for an editor, treat it as though you're shopping for a car. To be honest, you want to go to several different lots. And so I always say interview 2 or 3 or 4 different editors, especially if you're going to be working on a memoir. Sure, they need to have the experience. They need to be able to edit the manuscript well, but if it's also personal information, it really does help if you have a similar personality or you at least get along well on the phone, if there's some sort of camaraderie, if they understand your goal. You need to feel comfortable with them so that you trust them to do the work and so that the communication is fluid. So I would say interview several people. For editorial costs, there's not really, there are some guidelines, but it's not, it varies by hour and it varies by location. The South has sometimes different pricing than New England. It just totally depends. So you'll also want to check and make sure that they have the timeline available that you need. You want to make sure that they give you a quote and then it matches with your budget. Past that, if you're going to self-publish, there's so many options. If you're going to self-publish, I would say the same thing. Look into 3 or 4 or 5 different companies to make sure that you feel confident that they've given you the correct information, that you feel comfortable about the process, comfortable about the price, and that you know exactly what you're getting on the back end so that you're not surprised with any extra costs. And 2, if the project is over $1,000, which larger projects can be, I would say make sure that you get any sort of pricing and timeline information in writing. I always use contracts so that there's no question. There's not, 6 months down the road and confusion about payment or, what was due when. So I would say also get something in writing and, if they have a contract available, get a contract.
So if you're a listener on the show and you're looking to do a book, these are some of the things that when you're sitting down with someone, having these conversations where you're kind of searching out or going from car lot to car lot looking for the right person to deal with, these are some of the things that you need to hear from them. Like I tell people all the time, if you're hiring a business coach and they don't ask you some questions about your personal life, they're not going to know what your struggles are. Mm-hmm. So if you're looking to do a book and people aren't asking questions that can make you more familiar with what you just said. So, for instance, a person looking for a book should ask a question like, so do you use a contract? And if the person doesn't use a contract, a flag should go up, not because they're not good at what they do, just because you want to make sure that you're protecting yourself from both sides, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. And another thing, I know this comes up fairly often when self-publishing, but so self-publishing, anybody can do it these days. If you want to do it well, you still have to put money into editing and to the design, because I think we've all seen books that you can just look at them and think, oh gosh, that was self-published. Well, you don't want your book, you don't want that to be your first reaction. You want your book to look just as amazing as a book that came from, a big publishing house. So you will have to put a little bit of money into the editing and the design, but that is what the design, at least, the design and the title is what is going to jump out at, people in the bookstore or catch people's attention if you've got a booth and you're selling it someplace. So that first impression, it really does count. So do take the time, spend the time, and find professionals to help you edit and design the book.
Yeah, my personal book, a friend of mine at church sketched out this idea I was telling him about for the cover, and from the title that I had, and they sketched that out on a napkin, and I took it to a graphic designer, and I paid a good price, but no one could believe that the cover came from a sketch on a napkin. So it's really important to know that you do get what you pay for. And if you want to be recognized as the expert, you don't want to cut corners that having good content not read because the cover didn't look good at all. So, Alice, we're up against the clock. Please let people know how they can get in touch with you and how they can do business with you. If you come out and speak, if you do workshops, webinars.
Mm-hmm. I do workshops. Right now they've been mostly in the South, but I will be doing more in the future. I do take coaching clients if anybody just needs accountability to get your book finished, to even get your book started. If you need to know about the publishing industry, I do that as well. My website is www.alicesullivan.com, and that's Alice, like Alice in Wonderland, alicesullivan.com. And if people have publishing questions in general, I'm happy to answer. There's so much information out there. I don't mind at all, pointing somebody in the right direction so they don't waste their time.
Well, I apologize because we're up against the clock, but we have to